What makes an album perfect? And is there such a thing as a metric to define if a record is perfect or not? Obviously want to know what your guys' opinions are of this and what you think makes an album perfect. There really is no wrong answer on the topic. I want to get as close to objectivity as I possibly can. I want to give you my perspective on it, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. But at the end of the day, there is a subjective and an objective argument when it comes to this sort of topic. The subjective, if not easy, explanation for this is it's whatever album you have the strongest emotional connection to. Maybe you tie it to a portion of your life that you look back on and reminisce with nostalgia. Maybe it's something that just wowed you and left such an imprint on you that it changed how you saw music as a whole. Your perfect albums are going to be your experience, and no one can take that away from you. I'm going to start with probably the easiest example of what would make an album perfect, and that is just clear-cut inventing something that had never been done before. The forefathers of any genre, I think, are as close to perfect as you can get, whether you're talking about Death and Possessed for death metal, or Bathory and Venom and the King Diamonds and Celtic Frost of the world for black metal, as well as the innovators of Norwegian black metal, Carcass with core grind. I think anytime a band comes around that just makes something brand spanking new, anything that comes after that might be able to top that. They might be able to even build a higher range of expertise at their craft than the people who made it to begin with, because, you know, the classic saying, there's always going to be something better than you. But I think that if you straight up fucking birth something, you should be defined as perfect, or at least as close to it as you can be, if only for the roots alone. But there is another side of that coin. What about the bands that recontextualize and redefine how a genre is perceived to begin with? I think that this is a little bit more of a subjective argument, but my take on it is when you feel that a band is coming around that you know for a fact is going to influence bands to come for decades, when you hear something that you know is putting together influences, putting together some amalgamation, or blowing the minds of something, I would dare say that a band like Infant Annihilator could be considered perfect for what they did to completely redefine how deathcore was perceived, because up until that point, who the fuck cared about brutality and the loudness war and breakdowns and 50,000 heavy fucking breakdowns with 5,000 BPM blast beats playing out? That wasn't really a discussion, and that laid the framework for the Worm Shepherds, the Jalukas, the Lorna Shores of the world. I would say that whether or not you enjoy the material itself or not, whenever a band comes around that is clearly going to set the stage and set the tone of a genre for many years, if not decades to come, breathing influence into so many bands that are going to come after them, I think you have to put some respect on their albums' names, or at least the album that started that trajectory. I don't think I need to remind anyone that back in the 2010s, every fucking new metalcore band wanted to be Architects so bad. Does that mean that Architects records were perfect? Maybe they're as close to it as you possibly can get, because the mimics and the copycats were plentiful around that time, and even though Asking Alexandria's Stand Up and Scream is considered corny and cringy, that completely brought a brand new group of emo metalcore scene kids into the forefront. So I do think that there is a linkage between what makes an album perfect or a band perfect and the influence that they have on what comes after them. Take a band like Sun, for example. Their drone metal style isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's a very jarring and abrupt listen. It is very harsh. It is sonically a fucking assault, but the influence that Greg Anderson and Stephen O'Malley had on the field of noise music, drone metal, and noise and distortion and feedback for all of metal cannot be understated. Same with a project like Earth, or a project like Boris, or a project like Merzbow. You may not like noise artists, but you can't deny the influence that they had on not only the noise scenes that they came from, but metal as a whole, with countless artists that aren't even linked to the noise scene saying that they took influence from said artists. So far we have literally inventing a genre and influence on a genre, but I think hand in hand, kind of going hand in hand with that, is redefining how a genre is seen, period. If you are a band that gets effortlessly compared to constantly, if you start hearing things like, this band isn't as good as blank, or I want to listen to blank instead, or they are just a diet blank, or a bargain bin blank band, that's a big sign that their influence has already started to creep its way into the genre. So when you hear terminology thrown around like, this band ruined this genre, or ruined music for me, that is pretty big, and it speaks volumes to the influence that they have. This happened when Lorna Shore came came on the scene and people were like, well, they just fucking won deathcore. Like, what am I supposed to listen to now? Because they're literally Lorna Shore. And as much as some people hate them, a lot of people feel that way about Sleep Token. There aren't many bands that take all of their influences, put them together in the witch's cauldron, stir it around, and birth it into existence. And so people are like, well, there's no one like Sleep Token, so Sleep Token ruined music for me. If you feel like your outlook on a genre has completely shifted just because of the existence of one band, or you notice a massive change in the landscape of a specific genre, chances are that band or the project that they blew up with is as close to perfect as you can get. And of course, I have to mention standing the test of time. This is probably one of the biggest things. I think that sort of people really get in their heads about throwing around 10 out of 10s. Whenever a record is a 10 out of 10, it's fantastic and it's a show-stopping moment. Everyone needs to stop what they're doing and listen to it. I've had this happen on my channel. I sparingly give away 10 out of 10s when I review records, but when I have, it has been a moment and people have been hyped. And when I post it on my community tab, it's like, what is the record? What's gonna be a 10 out of 10? And it's like, this kind of cult of personality around 10 out of 10s is a big deal for music criticism, music journalism. But no matter what you give a 10 out of 10 to, or a 1 out of 10 to, there's something to be said about just standing the test of time. And I think it's very hard to call something a classic record if you don't let it take its time. As much as we can say that a band has changed how a genre is seen, or has changed how a specific movement is seen, look at what Death Heaven and Alcest did back when they were really big in the black gaze movement, or Wolves in the Throne Room redefined how American black metal was seen, Liturgy completely threw black metal through a fucking loop. All of these things change how a genre's evolution goes. It's always going to be this thing that's never a thorough line. It's versatile, it's boundary pushing, there's always going to be experimentation, and there's always going to be bands that are testing the limits of what you can do. But even if in the short term something seems brand spanking new, you gotta give it a little bit of time to see how the other things play into it, like influence, like how it affects the genre as a whole, how people react to it, if it changes how people see an entire genre. Like I said, it is going to be up to you from a subjective standpoint, what you see as perfect based on your own enjoyment with something, and that's obviously how it should be. But what are your guys' opinions of this? What do you think constitutes an album or a band being perfect or as close to it as you can define? Let me know down in the comment section below. There is no wrong answer, and I can't wait to discuss this topic with you guys. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.